House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced that she will run for re-election, seeking her 19th term representing California's 12th congressional district. Pelosi made the announcement in an online video. She did not clarify if she will also seek a leadership role. Meanwhile, Congressman Jim Cooper of Tennessee, a Democrat, announced that he will retire at the end of his term. Cooper is the 29th House Democrat to announce that he will not seek another term. Currently, there are 14 GOP House members who are either retiring or seeking other office. Big parts of the Biden agenda are stalled in Congress. Democrat leadership has now turned its attention, which may gain bipartisan support, enhancing competition in the global economy, especially competition with China. NTD's Melina Wisecup has more.
The White House has seen one setback after another, and Biden is ready for a big win with the new American Competition Act. The House just this week unveiled their version of a bill that was already passed in the Senate to invest in American innovation, technology, and manufacturing. It's also meant to reduce our dependence on China.
It's been on the launch pad for more than a year. We need to get moving if we're serious about competing with China.
The nearly 3,000-page bill invests in strengthening supply chain in American manufacturing, scientific research and technology, securing global competitiveness, and includes the CHIPS for America Act, a key piece to address the shortage of semiconductors used in everything from smartphones to cars.
We're going to stamp everything we can made in America, especially these computer chips.
The House's bill also includes $3 billion for solar manufacturing, a key investment to reduce dependence on China's green energy market as the Biden administration plans to move toward renewable energy. The Senate passed their version of the bill over the summer with bipartisan support, but some Republicans were disappointed that the final version didn't include action to further prevent intellectual property theft by Chinese Communist Party spies.
What if a year from now we find out, and you're going to read an article 2 years from now, whatever, that says the Chinese have stolen a quarter, 25, 30% of the IP developed by the money that's been put forward in the bill that was passed? Then we're all going to feel pretty stupid around here.
Rubio this week sent a fiery statement that the DOJ has not done enough. Rubio pointed to a recent case with Professor Gong Chin at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Chin failed to disclose his ties to the Chinese Communist Party and was taken to court, but the DOJ dropped Chin's case last week.
And so from what I've seen in this bill, it doesn't take action to stop those CCP officials from continuing to steal that intellectual property theft. Do you think that's a problem if it goes unaddressed?
Chinese espionage is a massive problem. I'm not sure this bill is the place to address it. There are efforts in the FBI and Department of Justice to go after the Chinese. Those probably need to be expanded. But Chinese espionage, IP theft is different from supporting our own science and technology base.
Melina, the House is planning to take up this bill when they come back to D.C. next week. Do you expect it to pass as is?
Well, I do expect some version of this bill to be passed and signed into law by President Biden. And what we'll see over the next week is much debate and discussion around this. Some parts will be taken out, some will be kept. Folks in the scientific and technological community say that they expect the climate change piece in particular will be dropped from the bill, but they do expect, and they say these pieces should stay, that is the CHIPS Act to invest in our semiconductors manufacturing here in America and the investments in our scientific and technological community. But here's the question now. Will senators once again join in a bipartisan effort to pass this, or will Senate Republicans waver on their vote if they don't get to add some amendments, such as some action to protect against intellectual property theft? Steve?
Thanks for that, Melina. The CCP is being accused of manipulating U.S. government protocols on Capitol Hill and taking advantage of a loophole to silence dissenting voices. And the House just took on a new bill in an effort to curb the CCP's dominance. Here to discuss, we have New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Thank you. It's great to be on.
Now, Congresswoman, you've recently spoken out about a Chinese state-run surveillance company called Hikvision and their attempts to silence dissent and manipulate the United States Congress while doing so. This is a very important story, but like so many things involving the CCP, it's complicated and convoluted. Please try to break down this situation and tell us exactly what you're calling for.
Well, what people don't know, and unfortunately doesn't get reported on, is Hikvision is actually a Chinese-backed, state-run surveillance company that actually, sadly, is doing the type of surveillance and video surveillance to actually determine ethnicity. And it's been used against the Chinese Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in China to segregate them and to target them. And this company is very malicious and malevolent. They have they attempted to go after IPVM, who is an independent company that has been trying to expose some of the malevolent activity from Hikvision. And unfortunately, they were using the U.S. government agents or U.S. Congress and the Office of Ethics and Clerks to try to cause them to do an investigation of IPVM. And it is really just no business of a foreign Chinese-backed company to be interfering and trying to use and exploit our ethics committee to try to spy on and try to cause sanctions to be, or even fining or any other penalties to be weighed in on a U.S. company that is actually exposing them in the media. So it was an attempt at censorship using our very own government against another company.
Wow, that's really incredible. The CCP seems to never truly be held accountable. We see that from their abysmal human rights record that's been going on for decades, to allowing this coronavirus to escape China, all the while locking down Beijing and Shanghai from flights out of Wuhan. What do you think it's going to take to get this regime in line with the rest of the civilized world?
Well, this is a huge challenge. China is our biggest adversary. They're also very powerful in every way, militarily, economically. And unfortunately, we do have a lot of American companies and a lot of big billionaires and people who are engaged and involved in Chinese companies. And they have been for a long time, because the theory was, if we open up China and we give a lot of, give freedom to and promote them in a democrat, to give the benefits of democracy without actually the burdens of democracy, they'll come through and they will, minimize their human rights violations. They will feel the pressure, to actually embrace some of our human rights beliefs and our democratic way of life. But the opposite is true. They're really naturally and instinctively authoritarians, and they can be cruel and exacting. And they've used the United States and some of these, I'll say naive, I'm not sure how naive they are, if that's the right word, but U.S. partners who have allowed this to continue to fester and grow, and huge investments by U.S.-backed billionaires and others and companies, even pension funds across the nation, the California Pension Fund and many others, are very dependent on China and China's role, and it's very hard to eliminate them.
It's truly scary when you put it into perspective like that, how many different angles the CCP is coming at us and the rest of the world. It truly is. Now, you touched upon IP theft. The Senate passed a bill called the United States Innovation and Competition Act in an attempt to reel in China a few months back. The House has just taken this bill up. Are you optimistic about this legislation?
This is another attempt by the Democrats to shove through a 3,000-page bill that no one's really had a chance to work with. They haven't worked with members on both sides of the aisle in the House on this. And as a manufacturing business owner in upstate New York, we're in our 76th year of business, it concerns me that the focus is going to be on really more of a corporatist model, taking more of a Chinese model, actually, taking this sort of state-run idea that we're going to compete head-to-head with China. It's almost like a quasi-government model. And I come from New York State, which actually has a very good record of this. One of the bad examples, but I think it also could be a concern, is that in New York State, we've invested heavily, for example, with billions of taxpayer money into this nanotechnology. And really what we're doing is paying for the research and development that these independent companies would use. And we've created these huge institutions, academic institutions, which are just really filled with a lot of academic friends and family of powerful politicians. And not all of it is focused on really innovation and building a durable economy where we have actual return on investment and we have actual growth. And that's what worries me about this bill from my first glance. I've only gotten to kind of comb through the provisions because it was just dropped. It's so long. And that's, again, another problem I have is that why are we not carving through all these issues with, bringing experts to testify on the floor, bringing in innovators and people to weigh in congressional committee system so we know what's going on and what the best way is to build legislation that will actually, encourage entrepreneurship and innovation and things that we need to have coming from our private sector, not being top-down, centrally motivated by government and academic institutions, which are really like quasi-government institutions and the effect that they have.
Representative Claudia Tenney, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And Democratic Senator Mark Warner has tested positive for the CCP virus. His spokesperson said his symptoms are mild. The 67-year-old Virginian has been vaccinated and has received his booster. Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury also tested positive for the CCP virus. The New Mexico Democrat, also fully vaccinated and boosted, said she sought, quote, medical guidance after experiencing respiratory symptoms. The State Department is considering allowing American diplomats and their families to leave China. This is due to China's strict pandemic rules. Restrictions include strict quarantine measures, forced admittance to COVID fever clinics, and separation from children. An insider told Reuters that the U.S. Embassy in Beijing conducted an internal survey. It showed that 25% of the staff and family members would choose to leave China as soon as possible. And on Tuesday, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin established a dedicated email address for parents to report divisive practices in schools. Youngkin cited a specific example on the John Frederick Show on Monday, something called Privileged Bingo. It's a game based on race, religion, and other perceptions of privilege. The game was being used in a Fairfax, Virginia high school. One of the indicators of privilege, according to the game, was being from a military family. Fairfax County Supervisor Pat Harity said that including military kids as a privileged group was divisive and offensive. Youngkin signed an executive order banning critical race theory on his first day in office. He says that we must teach the dark chapters in our history, but said he wants to remove divisiveness.
Practices like teaching that one group is inherently privileged and another is a victim, or that in fact people today should be held responsible for sins of the past,